Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. I want to continue the conversation on college football, but I want to switch gears to what has quickly become our favorite daytime reality soap opera. I like to call it As the Big Ten Turns. That's right, because ever since back on whatever it was, June 31st or June 30th or whatever it was, that we got the announcement that USC and UCLA were leaving the Pac-12 for the Big Ten. The next question that has never stopped becoming a topic of conversation: who's next? Who's going to the Big Ten? When is it going to happen? How is it going to go down? What is the next crazy round of expansion? And my stance on this has been pretty clear. Until Notre Dame does something, nothing is really going to happen. And Notre Dame, it appears now, is set to remain an independent with a new contract with NBC. Of course, that doesn't stop the rumors from swirling, and it doesn't stop, apparently, meetings from happening, because on Monday we got a report from Brett McMurphy from Action Network, well-respected college football insider. He said that, drumroll please, Oregon and the Big Ten had a little bit of an exploratory meeting in Chicago earlier this week. And so, of course, the second that happened, the internet went crazy. Here we go. It's the Michael Scott gif. It's happening. Realignment is coming. Everybody get ready. And this is especially on the heels of last week when Kevin Warren did an interview with Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel that actually might be airing like tonight or tomorrow or something, where he said, no. Expansion is very much a possibility in the future. So, again, we had a Michael Scott gif situation. It's happening. We're going crazy. And I'm here to pour some water on the fire. Call me a wet blanket, because I really think that, I think Brett McMurphy is a well-respected reporter. I do think this report is honestly much ado about nothing. First of all, as I've said on this show many times, the devil is in the details. And it really only took one detail to figure out that this conversation, this meeting, whatever you want to call it, really wasn't all that much of a deep dive into Oregon's potential for the Big Ten. Why is that? Well, Brett McMurphy did report that they met. But then he also cited another source, a second source, who confirmed that there was a meeting. But among the people who were not there, were Oregon's school president, Oregon's AD, and the commissioner of the Big Ten, Kevin Warren. So three of the most prominent people that would be involved in a conversation like this were not at the meeting, to which I ask, what the heck kind of meeting was this? To me, you know what this would be like? This would be like, I don't know, you get a report out that Tom Brady is getting set to join the Dallas Cowboys. And then you find out through the report that while they did have a meeting, Tom Brady wasn't there, his agent wasn't there, and Jerry Jones wasn't there. And you kind of sit there and say, well, who the heck was there, and why the heck is this report out? And so I'm not criticizing Brett McMurphy's reporting. I'm just saying, what kind of meeting is it where the three biggest power players in this conversation would not be there? Or three of the biggest power players? Because that was the response that I got when I had the audacity to say, what kind of meeting doesn't involve the school president, the AD, and the Big Ten commissioner? The follow-up was naturally, Torres, you know that the school president and the AD are not the most powerful people in Oregon. The most powerful person in Oregon is Phil Knight, the founder of Nike. To which I'd say, yeah, you're right. Phil Knight is the most powerful person at Nike. But I'll be honest, I don't think Phil Knight has all that much sway in this whole Oregon to the Big Ten conversation. Why do I feel pretty confident saying that? I don't know. It is because we already got Big Ten expansion from the Pac-12, and Phil Knight was not involved in that conversation. As a matter of fact, the reports are that Phil Knight was blindsided by the news, much like everybody at Oregon was. And so if Phil Knight was that powerful, and Phil Knight is powerful, but if he was powerful in this specific conversation, why didn't he know about it? Why was he blindsided? And then the reports in the following days after, you read them just like I did, that Oregon and Phil Knight was essentially calling and begging the Big Ten and Big Ten officials to let them in. He was willing to write checks that few people in the world would be able to write. So my question is, if Phil Knight is so powerful in this specific situation, why is he acting like Aunt Becky, Lori Loughlin? Remember her when she was writing checks to get her daughter into USC? Well, why is Phil Knight trying to just write a check into the Big Ten if he's that powerful? If he's that powerful, he should be wanted. Oregon should be wanted. And so to me, it comes back down to all of the same conversations that we have had on this podcast. And so far, I've been right. Things are always subject to change. Expansion for the Big Ten does not make sense right now. You can argue with me. You can debate me. You can tell me I'm wrong, but it doesn't make sense. First of all, just from a logistical argument, it doesn't make sense because the Big Ten just spent years putting together this TV deal. They spent years working behind the scenes to get USC and UCLA lined up, to get the TV partners on board with this, and to get the most money possible for their TV contract with USC and UCLA. So you mean to tell me they spend years doing this, years orchestrating things behind the scenes, years getting USC and UCLA on board, months putting together the most lucrative TV deal in the history of college sports, and now they're just ready to blow it all up 2 weeks later? Again, if they wanted Oregon, Washington, Cal, Stanford, they would have just taken them in the first place. And it certainly doesn't make sense to add them at this particular moment when they just spent months getting this TV deal done. So, hey, oh, by the way, we just spent 4 months putting together this TV deal. Let's blow it up in 10 seconds to get Oregon and a bunch of other Pac-12 teams involved. It doesn't make sense logistically. By the way, I saw something that there are escalators involved. There are escalators involved in every contract ever been written ever. Okay, that's one. Two, the only price dollar amount is Notre Dame. Notre Dame has a fixed price. If they join the Big Ten, the TV contract increases this much. And here is where I continue. I feel like I'm screaming at a wall and nobody is listening. What everybody has to understand, and I know you guys and girls do because you listen to the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, you're the smartest people going in college sports. You can go to that water cooler and sound smarter than anybody else. By the way, that's why I need to tell people about the show, neither here nor there. But why it doesn't make sense, besides the timing, fiscally, it doesn't make sense at all. I don't mean physically like you're pumping weight at the gym. I'm talking about fiscally, financially, it doesn't make sense. And this is the part that no one understands. Everybody keeps saying, well, it's only a matter of time before this happens, before that happens, before. The only reason any expansion happens at all, ever, at the highest level. Now, maybe Conference USA has to add a team here or there. Maybe the Mountain West has to add a team because they lost a team. But at the highest levels of college sports, in the SEC and the Big Ten, the only time you add teams is when they bring value, when they add value to your TV contract. We heard last week in the meeting between UCLA and the state of California, they're trying to keep UCLA in the Pac-12, that USC alone brings about $9.5, $10 million a year to the TV contract of the Pac-12. UCLA is probably about half of that, $3.5, $4 million. And so, again, I cannot emphasize this enough. You are only going to add teams that bring value to the existing TV contract. Right now, all 16 Big Ten schools, if you include UCLA and USC, all 16 teams are going to be making an average of $71 million a year per year as part of that $8 billion TV contract. I did the numbers, not very hard. $8 billion divided by 7 years comes out to like $1.14 billion a year. You divide that by 16 schools, that comes out to like $71 million a year. Now, I know it's going to increase over the course of the contract. I know the number you're going to get in year 1 isn't the same as the number in year 8. But I bring it up to say, just go ahead and do some back-of-the-envelope math, okay? So I did it, and I'm not great at math. But just if you add, let's say you add 4 teams, because I don't think Oregon's coming alone. So you say you add Oregon, Washington, Cal, and Stanford. That seems to be the logical where everyone thinks this is going. I did the math. for teams to just stay at the $71 million that they're currently making, and for the 4 teams coming to make the same amount of money. Now, there's obviously a possibility that they would get a prorated deal. They wouldn't get the same amount as the vested members of the Big Ten. But you're talking about a minimum of $280 million in a future TV contract just to get everybody back to even. So I'm not trying to get all mathematical on you here. But you're asking a network to take what amounts to 4th-tier games, probably all the West Coast games, all the teams that the Pac-12 can't get a TV deal right now because nobody wants them. And you're asking a network to pay for their 4th-tier TV games. You're asking them to pay $280 million. Besides the fact that that's crazy, that's just to get back to a baseline where if you're adding teams in the Big Ten, the Ohio States and Michigans and Penn States that are actually making the money for the conference are making the same amount of money that they're making right now. So you need a new contract worth $280 million, an extra contract on what they just signed. $1.1 billion a year, $280 a year, just to make back what you're making now. So how much money are we talking about to actually make more money for everybody else? Because that's what it comes down to. I'm getting real mathematical on you here. I'm like Confucius. I don't know who's a famous mathematician. But the point I'm trying to make is, just to break even, you have to come up with a new TV contract that is astronomical. And that's to break even. And if you're Ohio State, if you're Michigan, if you're USC, you don't want to break even adding teams. You want to make significantly more money. You have to make significantly more money for this league for there to be value. So now you're talking again, I'm not going to throw out crazy numbers, but what, $350 million, $400 million for anybody to make any sort of added money by adding you. By the way, I did the math on that one. A $350 million contract from some TV network, and maybe you get it. That only adds about $4 million a year to the existing deal per school. So now you're asking yourself, is it worth it to go from 71 to 75 million a year? Is it real? I'm getting off topic here. Maybe my numbers are off a little bit, but the amount of money you would need for everybody to make a significant increase, Oregon's not bringing that. Washington isn't bringing it. And oh, by the way, outside of that, Oregon is going to have the same issue when it comes to any conversation with the Pac-12 that they have, or with the Big Ten that they've always had. Academically, they're behind. I will tell you, because I've said it on this show many times, at least once, I know that. I had a conversation with somebody who knows these things. And what he told me, he said the academics really matter to the Big Ten. It's why USC and UCLA were interesting. It's why Oregon wasn't. And what this person told me was that if the Big Ten were to add one Pac-12 school, if they had a power ranking of the Pac-12 schools they'd be most interested in adding, Stanford would be ahead of Oregon. Has little to do with academics, everything to do with being an international university, little to do with athletics, everything to do with an international university, great academics. They're also great in all the other sports, by the way, too. But my understanding is that in the pecking order of Big Ten teams, schools that the Big Ten wants, outside of Notre Dame, Stanford is number one ahead of Oregon. So to me, this is great for Twitter fodder, and I'm not questioning Brett McMurphy. If you get a scoop like this, you got to report it. But what does it actually mean? I really don't know. You know what I think it was, honestly? If Kevin Warren isn't there, if the school president and the AD weren't there, I think it was probably either Phil Knight or some other prominent boosters just making a phone call to somebody who's affiliated with the Big Ten. And by the way, when you have a preliminary conversation with the Big Ten, it doesn't necessarily mean you're sitting down with the commissioner or the associate commissioner. It could be somebody in the Big Ten office. It could be an AD from one of those universities. And to me, that's probably what this is. Listen, I'm not a rich guy. I'm far from it. But rich guys and girls get together all the time to talk about rich guy and girl stuff. And I'm sure somebody from Oregon, maybe Phil Knight, was in town and tried to just get some FaceTime with somebody over a lunch somewhere in Chicago. I don't think this has very much legs. Rich guy conversations happen all the time. Think about, I just used the Tom Brady reference. Think about the Tom Brady report about the Miami Dolphins a few weeks ago. There was like a casual, loose conversation between Tom Brady and one of the rich owners that went to Michigan. It never became anything because Tom Brady didn't become a Dolphin. He became a Buck. And so I sit there and say that I get why this story looks juicy. And I get why people are adamant thinking that the next big thing is coming. but I just don't see it. I just don't see Oregon at this moment in time. Things are always subject to change. But at this time, I don't think Oregon's a legitimate candidate to go to the Big Ten